This is Henry, and this is John. Both Henry and John are 5-year-old kindergarten students from the same neighborhood, attending the same school, with the same family income, similar interests, and equal levels of intelligence and academic potential. However, there is one difference between the two. John is white, and he speaks what may generally be considered mainstream English, whereas Henry is African American, and he speaks African American Vernacular English, or AAVE, a linguistically recognized variant of English. AAVE has extensively studied characteristics that differentiate it from what many would call standard English. It evolves, has regional differences, and follows patterns just like any other language or variant of English. So, with that being said, even though Henry speaks AAVE and John speaks another form of English, the boys should grow up to lead pretty similar lives, right? Unfortunately, this is not the case. Inherent linguistic biases in education systems, in government, and in the workforce emphasize the privilege of the people, and here it is important to note that they are typically white people who speak what is considered standard English. Obviously, many factors contribute to institutionalized racism, but one that often gets swept under the rug is language-based discrimination. In the case of Henry and John, a number of events may occur which will negatively affect Henry and emphasize John's white privilege. For example, their school may group students by perceived achievement. John's English will align with the English used in most classrooms, and thus he will likely have high English scores. However, Henry may be faced with a dialectal barrier and thus given lower English scores, even if he has excellent communication and comprehension skills. Standardized scores such as these often affect the way students are treated. Therefore, Henry may have a disadvantage that follows him all the way to graduation, even though he and John began school with the same academic potential. Say both boys choose to pursue higher education. John gets into multiple colleges easily and receives plenty of merit-based financial aid based on his impressive academic history. Henry, on the other hand, has some difficulty. Colleges see that according to his previous school record, he performed at an average level, and compared to John, he is at a disadvantage from the moment he submits an application. Thus, John might go to his dream school with little financial strain, and Henry may have to settle for a school he cares for less, accumulating thousands in loan debt, even though the two have the same economic background. One last example. Henry and John have graduated from college and are entering the workforce. Coincidentally, they apply for the same job and are chosen to go to the second round of the application process, a phone interview. When the interviewer hears John's voice, they will not likely associate it with anything. However, the interviewer may consciously or subconsciously judge Henry's AAVE and attach it to their own racial connotations and biases, for example, that Henry sounds less professional than John, regardless of how eloquent he is. Obviously, these examples are hypothetical, but they are based on some very possible consequences of linguistic discrimination, which contributes to institutionalized racism and can lead to an ever-accumulating series of disadvantages in the life of a person who speaks an English variant. With that being said, what can be done? Looking back at the lives of Henry and John, it can be seen that John's privilege became apparent all the way back in elementary school, so why not start there when trying to fix the problem? If part of teacher education involved linguistic diversity and teachers were taught to stop instructing based on a dichotomy of right and wrong English, the system of language discrimination would begin to change. In today's society, students may still have to be taught in explicitly classroom English, but that doesn't mean they must be asked to give up and condemn their home language or language variant, or that they should be put at an academic disadvantage. If teachers were instructed in methods of teaching English that are more respectful, encouraging, and productive, it would lead to a decrease in linguistic bias and an increase in inclusivity. Additionally, change can begin on an individual level. If more people are aware of linguistic diversity and appreciative of English variants like AAVE, they can actively help to dismantle the current element of language discrimination that persists in our society. So, next time you hear someone speak a version of English that sounds different from yours, pause. Examine your privilege, look for any internal biases you may have, and learn to listen to the words that the person says, not how they say them. Appreciate the value in language variety and influence your peers, politicians, and educators to do the same.